My name is Jose Zambrano, and this is Death Consciousness. What is death consciousness, and why does it matter? Death consciousness is the awareness that we will all die one day. It sounds intense, but it's something that every human will have to face eventually. The philosopher Socrates once said, "The unexamined life is not worth living." And in a way, death makes us examine life more deeply. In psychology, we study death consciousness because it plays a major role in how people deal with fear, make decisions, and find meaning. For example, it can influence why someone chooses a certain career, gets married, or even starts a family. So even though people try to avoid thinking about death, it actually impacts us all the time. What would you do if you knew you only had 1 year to live? Take a second to really think about it. Would you keep doing what you're doing right now? Would you change something big? Maybe you'd spend more time with loved ones or travel somewhere meaningful. Or maybe you just might take a risk you've been avoiding. The question might seem dramatic, but that's the whole point of death consciousness. It brings clarity. It forces us to focus on what really matters. Terror management theory was developed by psychologists Tom Fazinski, Jeff Greenberg, and Sheldon Solomon in the 1980s. The theory explains that humans are unique because we know we're going to die someday, and this knowledge causes a deep anxiety. To manage this fear, people create cultural worldviews like religion, tradition, or values that give life meaning and help us feel part of something bigger and more lasting. Self esteem plays a big role here too. When people feel like they are living up to their culture standards or achieving important goals, their self esteem acts like a shield, protecting them from the fear of death. In many ways, the things we do every day, our beliefs and achievements, help us manage this deep underlying anxiety. Why do you think people cling more strongly to their beliefs when reminded of death? When people become aware of death, whether because of personal loss, illness, or just deep thought, they tend to react in different ways. Some avoid the topic altogether, distracting themselves with things like work, entertainment, or denial. This can help reduce anxiety temporarily, but often leaves deeper fears unaddressed. Others take a more productive approach. They use death awareness as motivation to live more intentionally. That might mean making healthier choices like quitting smoking or spending quality time with loved ones, not out of fear, but from a deeper sense that life is more precious. Another concept is symbolic immortality. This is the idea that while we won't live forever, we can still leave something meaningful behind. People do this by raising families, teaching values, or creating traditions, or sometimes even building careers that outlive them. Creative expression is also a powerful way to cope. Many people channel their emotions into their music, into their art, into their writing, or into their performances. These outlets help people process complex feelings about mortality and leave behind something that reflects who they were. It's not just therapeutic, it's also a way of making meaning that lasts beyond someone's life. Finally, healthy behaviors often improve when people reflect on death, whether it's eating better, exercising, or avoiding risky actions. These choices often reflect a renewed commitment to living better and a fuller life. So, in the end, coping isn't just about managing fear, it's about finding meaning, creating legacy, and making choices that reflect what really matters. While death consciousness often triggers anxiety, it can also push people to live more meaningful and intentional lives. When we realize life is temporary, we begin to value it more deeply. Research connected to terror management theory shows that reminders of mortality, like attending a funeral or reading about death, can actually increase compassion, self reflection, and personal growth. Some people actually become more generous or more creative after being reminded of death. A more recent example is the COVID-19 pandemic. Even though people were afraid, many stepped up to protect others. They wore masks, checked in on neighbors, or helped the elderly. The fear didn't just cause panic, it led to compassion and community support. Death awareness can help inspire creativity by reminding people that time is limited and life is precious. When we confront our mortality, we often feel a deeper need to express our thoughts, emotions, and values. This can lead to powerful works of art, music, writing, or innovation. Creativity becomes a way to process deep emotions, make sense of life, and leave behind something meaningful. Many artists, philosophers, and musicians throughout history have created their most impactful work while reflecting on death or grief. In this way, the fear of death doesn't shut us down. It actually awakens a sense of urgency and purpose that fuels imagination and originality. Death isn't experienced the same way across the world. In many cultures, spiritual beliefs provide comfort and help reduce anxiety about death. For example, in Hinduism and Buddhism, the idea of reincarnation gives people hope for spiritual continuity. which can help death feel less final. In contrast, many Christian traditions emphasize the afterlife, heaven or hell, based on how someone lived, which can guide people's values and choices. Even burial rituals can deeply reflect spiritual beliefs. Jewish practices encourage simple and quick burials to show acceptance of death, while Muslim traditions involve positioning the body towards Mecca as a sacred farewell. Some indigenous communities embrace natural burials, connecting death to the earth and the cycle of life. According to terror management theory, these cultural systems aren't random. They develop to protect us from the fear of death. They help us feel like there's meaning and structure, even in something as unknown and uncontrollable as death. Here's a chart of some religions and their view on deaths, their practices, and their effect on death anxiety. How might your own cultural and spiritual background affect how you view death? As we grow older, our relationship with death tends to have a shift. Research shows that older adults often have a more balanced perspective. They're more likely to accept death, but that doesn't mean they're completely at peace with it. This is where the concept of middle knowledge comes in. Middle knowledge is when someone is both aware of death and still in some form of denial. For example, a person might say, I know I don't have much time left, but still makes plans for the future as if they'll live for years. This blend of acceptance and hope helps people cope, especially those facing illnesses or the natural aging process. In contrast, younger people are often more distant from the idea of death. There can be a sense of invincibility, like death is something far away or only happens to other people. That's why younger individuals may be more shocked or disoriented when confronted with loss for the first time. How we think about death really depends on our life stages, experiences, and emotional maturity. This is important to understand, especially when supporting others or even just reflecting on our own journey. To wrap things up, let's revisit the main ideas. Death consciousness, the awareness of our mortality, affects nearly everything we do. We've seen how it plays a role in fear, anxiety, and belief systems through terror management theory. We've looked at how people cope with awareness, whether by avoiding it, trying to live healthier, or creating a long lasting legacy through family, culture, or even art and music. We also explored how thinking about death doesn't have to be depressing. In fact, it can be a wake up call. It can make us more grateful, more generous, and more intentional in how we live. So, death awareness doesn't just shape how we die, it shapes how we live, how we love, and what we leave behind. Thank you for listening.